got back on course here in the last couple months as I ended my run for governor with a loss, and Chris got me back on the bike here. We're rolling fast, but hey, we're excited today to have Scott Painter on. Scott's an awesome entrepreneur, and Scott, just so you know, my focus has always been, finding the best entrepreneurs I can find to interview, to basically understand, their secrets of success and what got them to where they are today. Understand their toughest times, their best times, and their vision for the future. So that's kind of what we're all about. I've got some of the best entrepreneurs I believe in the country's history that I've had so far, and but in the last after my run for governor, I'm very convinced that I want to focus on entrepreneurs, great entrepreneurs, but those that are also great patriots. So when I've got somebody like you that served also, that's the best of the best. I get people that have served our great country, understand what the importance of free enterprise and free markets and freedom matters, and then you go on to create success in business. That's the best. So Scott, we are excited as heck to have you on today, and thank you for being here.
Well, I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much.
So Scott, So again, my thing is, I love our country. I was not blessed to serve our country. So I was actually, I ran for governor in our state so that I could serve in another way. I lost in the primary, a six race primary. It was a very, very fun experience. Actually, I learned a lot. And through that experience, I really realized who my friends were that cared about our country, our state, and our community, and our country. And some of my friends are really, great entrepreneurs also that, really aren't engaged with, really with our country and really willing to fight for the things I believe in. So I'm focused on people like you more than anybody else in my future, because I want to make sure that we tell the stories of people like you and other people that are entrepreneurs that understand the blessings they have, people like you that go out and fight for our country. So you're the ultimate type of person we like. Want to hear your story from the start to where you are today and your vision going forward. So
Sure.
If you can kind of share with us, your start, where you grew up and how you were raised. I know you look like you worked at a young age, like I did, and learned work ethic and values of work ethic very young, which is really cool.
Yeah, I grew up in Northern California. Was part of a very conservative family. I had a dad who didn't believe in credit cards. So you had to make your money before you could spend your money. That was sort of how I was raised. And I went to a Jesuit high school in Sacramento, California. And then at 17 years old, I decided to join the Army so I could get independent. Pretty much everything that I would say I needed to, develop as a habit to be successful, I learned in the Army. So it was a really good wake-up call for me and an opportunity to grow up real fast. I joined the Army, enlisted, and my entire strategy in joining the Army was to be able to go to West Point. I actually was at the University of San Diego. I was just about to go into my fall semester, and I had a motorcycle, and I was driving to the Mission Bay Aquatic Center to take a windsurfing lesson, of all things. And my motorcycle broke down right in front of the Army recruiting office. And this guy named Dwayne Stafford, a staff sergeant from Missouri, came out and he told me all about the military. And he showed me this book about West Point. And I thought, I came from a military family. My uncles were military and both my grandfathers were military. And so I grew up with a lot of respect. They were all Navy, though. And so they showed me this book about West Point. And I thought, well, gosh, if I was going to join the military, two things are true. One, I'd join the Army, and two, I would only do it by going to West Point. And so I said to this Army recruiter, as I'm about to become an enlisted soldier, how do I get into West Point? He says, well, we got to test you. We got to see how you do. But there is a very, very narrow window of opportunity to go to West Point by enlisting in the military first and then getting a military nomination. But it's a very low probability. And I thought, so you're saying there's a chance. So that's exactly what I did. I joined the Army. I went through the tests and I tested very well. I ultimately not only got a military nomination, I went to the United States Military Academy Preparatory School in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. And I ultimately got a presidential nomination, one of 5, and under George Bush, 41. And I ended up going to West Point. Upon arrival at West Point, I had already been in the military for about 4 years. So I had a couple rows of ribbons and an air assault and an airborne badge. And so I was pretty high speed when I showed up, and about 2 or 3 years older than all of the other plebes that were coming right out of high school. I also happen to have a younger brother who's exactly that same age. So I had that mental advantage of just being a little bit older. And immediately upon arrival at West Point, I went into plebe summer and did very well with all of the common skills and all the things, having been in the military prior to getting there. At the end of plebe summer, we held a vote, and I ran for class president. I was elected class president, and so I was at West Point for 2 years, and I was my class president for the class of 1993.
That's awesome.
You know, one of my biggest sort of moments at West Point was I got to be the cadet that led the tour when Ronald Reagan came after he was president to get his Thayer Award. And getting to take Ronald Reagan through West Point, give him the whole tour, introduce him to the whole Corps of Cadets was probably one of my biggest highlight moments.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And, you know what, tell us about that summer. What you call it, plebe summer?
Well, I think one of the things that you learn as a plebe is that part of the test is they give you too many things to do. And part of evaluating who can handle stress and who can get stuff done is they know that nobody can do all 10 things, for example. And the A play is to do 2 things really well and discard 8. And so you get a lot of cadets who try to do all 10 things and they fail at all 10. You try to get, you know, there's some cadets that end up doing one thing really well and fail at the rest. But it turns out that the real exercise is about knowing what matters and doing well enough at those things. And that tended to be a very good overlap with sort of how I see the world.
What are some of those things? So let's name some of those 10 things that you're pushed to do.
Well, West Point's all about leadership. So one of the things that you really have to do is figure out how to motivate those around you to go and accomplish certain objectives, right? So one of the things that we were put into is a lot of real wartime situations where you would actually have opposing forces. So you would have 2 units both going against each other, moving with what they call miles gear. So you've got laser, it's sort of like laser tag, but with real weapons. And one of the things that you really have to do is go out and operate under very little sleep. And by the time you get to day 2 or 3 of sleep deprivation, you're operating on about 10 or 15% of, sort of mental capacity. And not everybody is operating at the same level. Again, I was a little bit older than most of the other cadets that were there. And so I became sort of a natural leader very quickly. But I loved war games and strategy and figuring out how to sort of get all of those kinds of advantages. I was always a really good orienteer. I understood how to read maps and how to get people from one place to another. Everybody at West Point is effectively a systems engineer. One of the big things you learn as a plebe at West Point is the difference between honor and regulations. And this is a really big thing because, the whole theme at West Point is duty, honor, country, but the honor code is at the core of what cadets are taught. Integrity is by far the most important part of being a West Point cadet. And so you got a lot of these kids that are coming right out of high school, and they really don't understand how integrity is going to ladder up into battlefield tactics and leadership. But one of the first things that you're taught is that there's a difference between truth and manners, right? So,
sure.
When you're at West Point, everybody's assigned a family to look after you on the weekends. So you go to that family and they sort of adopt you while you're a cadet. But if you were to go to that family and they serve you a meal and the meal is awful, you're perfectly okay telling them it was wonderful. Secondly, when I was a cadet candidate, that's an all-military unit. So you come into the cadet candidate position really as a PFC or a sergeant, and you're going through all of the training necessary to become a better cadet when you get there. So you have a bit of a leg up on the kids that are coming right out of high school. You're being trained not just on the test taking that is going to get you into West Point in terms of SATs, so math and English, but you're also doing all of the pre-training and all of the maneuvers and things that you have to learn from a military point of view, so that by the time you get to West Point, you've got a lot of knowledge and you got a real leg up on everybody else who gets there. But when I was at the United States Military Academy Preparatory School, I was always one of those guys who was able to make a lot of stuff happen. And one of the things that we had was a break room where we had cable television. So I'd been in the military for a while. You were not allowed to have TVs, radios, or anything in your barracks. And so what I had done is gone out and bought a television, put it up in my wall locker into my bag. And then I went and I ran a splitter out of the break room so I could watch TV in my barracks room. But in order to make the actual thing work, I had to have a cable box. So I set up an account, and I was actually buying cable, but I did all the work and I set up everything, ran it outside under the eave and everything. And then when you finally get your nomination to West Point, only about 20% of the actual prep school goes. So that means that 8 out of 10 cadet candidates do not get to go on to West Point. So on the day that they announced that all of us were going and I got my nomination, there was a very jealous cadet candidate who felt that I maybe had taken his slot. So he reported me for having a television in my wall locker. Well, wow. I had to, as a cadet candidate, go through a mock honor trial and a mock disciplinary trial. And so the summer before I went to West Point, I was walking the area in Fort Monmouth as punishment for having done this. And I had violated a regulation. So as soon as we get up to West Point, honor training, which is a big core theme of the whole plebe summer, where they're trying to explain this difference between, being courteous to your sort of sponsor family and a total honesty, that there is a gray area, because that's a hard thing to be, if you're going to be so binary about honesty, you got to make sure that people never, ever lie. Right. And so in order to really give everybody an understanding of honor, they used my case from the prep school as an example. They said, okay, a heretofore unnamed cadet candidate did the following. Is it an honor violation or is it a regulations violation? As a way of understanding what is honor. So I became part of the curriculum during plebe summer, and everybody was talking about the cable kid. And ultimately, the example was being used as an example because I went ahead and I paid for the cable from the cable company. I was not stealing cable, so it was not an honor violation, but it was a regulations violation, and I had to be punished for that. Nobody knew who I was. So at the end of the summer, the way that the voting for class president worked is there's 36 companies in the plebe regiment. So at the end of summer, 36, every company nominated one cadet from their company to go up and be part of the whole class committee nomination process. So 36 of us were brought up on stage. And if you think about cadets as a general cohort, these are people who did probably the best in their high school. They were valedictorian. They were captain of the football team. I mean, these are all just the cream of the crop in terms of high school students across the country. They've got to get a nomination from a senator. They've got to get a presidential nomination. I mean, so there's a whole process, but you've got this incredible group of badasses, right? 36 of us go up on stage. I'm a little bit older, but the captain who was in charge of us from the regular army and stands up and says, okay, we're gonna go ahead and hold a vote for class committee. There's 36 of you. We're gonna get this done in 36 minutes. Here's how we're gonna do it. I'm gonna go ahead and have each candidate speak for 1 minute. They're gonna tell you who they are, why you should vote for them. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna vote on who's gonna be class president. We're gonna get it all done in under 36 minutes. So very, very military, very professional. He puts his hand out and I grabbed the mic. So I'm number one. And I stood up and said, hi, my name's Scott Painter. You all know me as the Cable Kid. So everybody instantly knew my case, my story. And I said, yeah, everybody else is going to get up here and tell you how accomplished they were in high school, how they led the football team, how they did this, how well they did, and why you should nominate them for class president. And I'm just going to tell you, there's no differentiation between any of the other 35 people that are going to follow me. I was none of those things, but I've always been able to pull stuff off. You guys all know what I did at the prep school with cable. So if you elect me class president, I'm going to go ahead and deliver the first ever unchaperoned field trip to New York City with all of us plebes without any chaperones. And I'm going to deliver a toga party for plebe parent week. I mean, nobody had ever done any of this. And I mean, rousing support. And everybody got up and did exactly what I said. I was valedictorian. I was class president. I was this, I was that in high school. Everybody was boring. And then when it came time to vote, I won by a landslide. And we did have a
awesome
party, and we did have a unchaperoned trip to New York City.
Get out, really?
Yeah. We were first.
Well, think of that. So you knew already what differentiation means to success, right? I mean, differentiate yourself. People understand that what differentiates you, and they'll want to do business with you, right? And that was the case. They wanted you to be their guy, the president, because they want somebody different, not like everybody else, right? And I got to believe that whole story, from there on in business and in life came through, right? And that was in the back of your mind, and differentiation probably has carried you through your whole career, right?
Well, I remember right after I got off stage, we were out at Fort Buckner. This was all done in military gear. We were in the field, and I was up on a stage, and I got called back to garrison. I got to meet the superintendent right away, and he said, "What in the hell are you doing promising things you cannot deliver?" And I said, "Why? You mean to tell me that we're going to go ahead and be military officers? We're going to go to war." At the time, we were in Desert Storm and then Desert Shield. So we were a military at war. I said, "You're going to go ahead and send all of us into real-time battlefield situations. You can't trust us to go to New York unchaperoned? That makes no sense at all." And you have to do it because I said it was going to happen. And if you disallow us, then you're going to be the soup that didn't allow us to be adults. Yeah. Right. So it ended up, I think becoming a very good lesson for life, as you say, Gary. For me personally, I definitely understand contrast. I definitely understand differentiation. And I think that, in business, if you're going to innovate, you don't just have to be better. You have to be radically better. It's not like you can come out with a product and say, it's going to save you 15%. It's going to have to totally change the way you do a thing. And so, the company I'm building right now is all about just understanding that we're going to be driving electric cars. And it is an eventuality, but a lot of people are worried about the range anxiety, the battery, all these things. And so we are literally, banking our entire future on the fact that people are fearful of these things, and we solve big problems, but we're massively more affordable. So versus renting a car from us, we're 5 times cheaper, not 15% cheaper. It's a big deal. So I think this has served me well, certainly throughout my entire life and my entire career.
So radical differentiation, I like that. And I've been blessed that I figured that out early on, and I've constantly differentiated myself from the industries that we serve too. And it's been through in the last 20 years through great technology added to old school industries that we've created some really cool things in technology and a couple of technology businesses, and then the old school businesses that we scale across the country. But again, when I think about you, you're in this high tech industry, man. You got to kick ass when it comes to differentiation. I like radical differentiation. For you have to have, or you're not going to survive, dude. You got too many amazing minds in technology on your butt. And so tell me about your business now, and then we'll go back to your first business. But let's while you're there, let's talk about that business you're in right now. How you radically differentiate, and what you're looking for, looking to be in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. So maybe just sort of put it in context to my journey. I've had 57 incorporations in 35 years. So I say
we're brothers. We're brothers, man. I've got over 40 startups and over 50 LLCs, right? But not all startups. Some of them are like management companies within my companies, that kind of thing. But over 40 startups myself too. So we're brothers when it comes to crazy entrepreneurial minds.
I'm about to see my folks for the holidays, and my mom still introduces me as a used car salesman. And I think that you always hear about you got to do what you love. I do think that great entrepreneurs and great companies solve a particular problem, and just about every company I've ever built is focused on solving one simple problem. I believe that buying and owning a car should be easier using technology. And I understand how technology can unlock that experience. But for me, if I look back at my life, the cars that I've driven over the course of my life are a reflection of where I am at. My car has been my avatar. It's been my ticket to freedom. I remember when I turned 16, my first car was a Fiat Spider 2000. I thought this was the coolest car. It was very, very, good looking car, but sort of a poor man's Ferrari. The fix it again, Tony. But the Fiat just had really great lines. It looked beautiful. It was a convertible. I rebuilt a 66 Camaro with my dad, an SS. It was absolutely
nice.
So, for me, cars were always sort of this ticket to freedom. I've got a 16-year-old son now. He's got a car from the business that I'm building now. We don't sell cars. We give people access to a car. So it's sort of a modern form of ownership where customers get to subscribe. But tell my 16-year-old that's not his car. That is his car. Doesn't matter how you do it. But that 16-year-old today, putting him into soul-crushing debt to get access to a car doesn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense for me either. My strategy in the early days was I picked out that car out of a junkyard and I fixed it up and, worked on it with my dad. And so I had a lot of pride around that car. But as soon as that car was, I could get behind the wheel, I took the keys and I was gone. Right. And that kind of freedom, I think, is at the core of our love affair with cars in this country. 3 out of 4 Americans still need a car to get to work. Ride sharing, for example, is going to totally transform how we all get around. I think, ride sharing certainly makes, driving drunk something that should go away forever. I mean, nobody should have an excuse for getting behind the wheel of a car intoxicated. But I don't think ride share is a good solution for a mother that's got to drive 2 kids to school. And it's certainly not affordable in terms of cost per mile. So rideshare, although a very interesting development in the whole automotive century, doesn't really change anything. It actually increased demand for cars. Car sales were up as rideshare was rising. So I think, how we buy, how we pay for, and how we relate to cars and all the natural adjacencies to ownership can be very, very simple by comparison to what it is today. I think we also, all get a car when something good happens in our life. We graduate from school, we buy a new house, we get married, we have kids. I mean, all of these things are really positive milestones. And yet ask anybody, what are the big sort of high friction, high anxiety moments in modern life? And buying a car is right up there. Going to the car dealership,
Absolutely.
Stuck in the back room, having to negotiate with somebody who does it for a living. There's a lot of disadvantages for car buyers. I'm a father of 4 kids and I've got 2 girls. 75% of people say that 75% of women say that they don't want to go into a dealership without a man. That I think is a horrible state of play for an industry.
Yeah.
So, all these companies for me are about that same journey. And I would say that they all have the same mission. Where I'm at today with Autonomy is just further down the road. The way that we make getting a car easy at Autonomy is we don't sell you a car. And we also don't lend you money. So we're sidestepping the 2 big gnarly parts of car ownership, purchasing the car and financing that car, because 95% of people do not pay cash for their car. A car just simply costs too much money relative to the average consumer's net income. And so at the end of the day, auto finance is absolutely essential, but the average car loan in America is 6 years and 10% interest. Almost half of what we pay for our cars is going to the money, not the car.
Yep.
And so you've got globally a $10 trillion ecosystem that finances cars. And so how you pay for that car is as important as
Wait. You said 10 trillion?
10 trillion
in the finance, in the interest cost in cars.
In terms of auto finance. So the way to think about it is we all spend about 12 to 13% of our gross income on mobility. So if you make $100,000 a year, you're spending between $12,000 and $13,000 of that money every year on the car and all the stuff related to the car. Mobility,
sure.
Not just paying for the car, but also insurance, maintenance, repair, fuel, and title, tax, and registration. So the overall cost of mobility is about half on the car and half on everything else. So I mean, it's sort of a fun cocktail party game, but I can ask you, how much you make and tell you probably what you're driving. If you make $100,000 a year, you're probably driving a car payment of about $600 a month. And depending on who you are, I can tell you, we play this game around the brands and the different trim levels of car.
Yeah.
But it's really fascinating how cars have become a very, very essential part of modern life. If you live in Los Angeles, you are what you drive. The Toyota Prius, back in the 90s, just went absolutely bananas here in Tinseltown, where everybody wanted to sort of wear their heart on their sleeve and show that they were eco-friendly, even though the early Toyota Prius, net wasn't the eco-friendly way to get behind the wheel of a car, right?
Yeah.
So I think that up in San Francisco, for example, when we run programs like Autonomy, what we're building, the LA crowd is all about getting access to a Tesla Model 3 because it's a fun car to drive and it makes them feel good about who they are and they're doing something sustainable, but it's sort of the hip, new, cool car. In San Francisco, it's because it's early adopters and technology. They want to make sure that they're driving the most technologically advanced thing and that it works for them from a technology point of view. So different strokes for different folks, but I've spent my entire sort of life in that journey trying to make buying and owning a car easier, joyful, fun, and affordable. What we're doing at Autonomy, though, does require that we buy the car. So there's a really interesting side narrative here, which is I think we're nearing the end of automotive debt. This idea that we've got to go out and borrow a big pile of money to buy what is 99% of the time a depreciating asset is absolutely not a good financial trade. It's not what you want to tell your children to go out and do. I mean, my 20-year-old son who's driving an Autonomy car, the idea that he would have to go out and borrow $50,000 at 13% interest, given how early he is in his arc, is absolutely absurd.
Detrimental to their financial future. Now, what about tell us about Autonomy and what you guys do then to make it better.
Yeah, we are an only EV focused subscription platform, and I'll explain what that means. First of all, we are only providing access to an electric car, and our belief is that we're all going to be driving electric. I think everybody knows that companies like Tesla, when Tesla vaulted to $1 trillion market cap last year, it was in response to Hertz ordering 100,000 Teslas at one time. That $1 trillion market cap is so enviable that every other car maker has now said they're not just going to make a couple of electric cars. They said they're going all in on electric. So General Motors didn't say, you know what, we're going to make one or two cars. They're going to go ahead and make the electric Corvette, the Hummer electric, Cadillac Lyriq, the Chevy Silverado, Equinox, Blazer. They're going all the way down to the Bolt. So they have cars ranging from mid-30s all the way up to the mid-100,000s. And so the sort of electrification of automotive is heavily underway. You've got a lot of big tailwinds too. You've got states like California, which tend to be a benchmark state where about a dozen other states almost follow everything that California does from a regulatory or legislative point of view when it comes to automotive and air quality. But California has tried to pass legislation that says 100% of cars sold in California by 2035 must be zero emission vehicles, electric cars. That is such a radical change to the status quo. You're basically saying an industry that makes today 1% of its cars as electric cars can't sell into California, the biggest car market in the world. There are also milestones for how fast we have to pick that up. Today in California, we're ahead of that glide path. 18% of all new cars sold in California this last year have been electric. That is
how's it compared to the rest of the country? What's the percentage in the rest of the country? Is it 5%, 2%?
Well, let me just walk you through all the numbers. You've got about 300 million non-electric cars on American roads. You have a total of 1.7 million electric cars. So we're less than 1% of the total number of cars. That's including California, are electric on American roads today.
Just over half a percent is all it is right now.
Half of 1%.
That's right. Half of 1%.
Right. And right now we're starting to see outside of California some very interesting signal from key demographics around cities. So Miami, Austin, Texas, Seattle, Washington, those three cities alone are nearing 10% of car sales being registered as electric vehicles. For us, we operate on a state-by-state basis because all sales and laws that govern the sale, financing, and insurance of cars tend to run state by state. So if you unlock a city in a particular state, you might as well open up the whole state. So for us, we just expanded literally in the last month to Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Washington. We had been operating this year only in California, but now we're in 5 states. We'll be in 32 states before the end of 2023. So for us, it's just, opening up those key cities, but there isn't anywhere else. I'm sorry.
So tell us exactly what you do, Scott. I mean, is it for the dealer networks? So tell me what you do and how you do it and why it's best.
Yeah, we provide consumers with access to an electric vehicle entirely on your phone. You simply go to the website, find out which pricing plan is good for you, which vehicle you want. Today, we offer mostly Teslas, the Tesla Model 3 and the Model Y, but in Q1, we'll be offering VinFast, Polestar, and Mercedes. We'll be expanding to about 17 other brands over the next 12 to 18 months. So you'll have a lot of selection. Once you select the car that's right for you, you're given a deep link to install the app. This is a location-based service. In the same way that you cannot call an Uber from your laptop, you have to have your cell phone connected to our app to be able to get the advantage of a vehicle subscription. Once you get to the app, it asks you for 2 things. You've got to have a valid driver's license and a credit card. That's it. We're not lending you money and we're not selling you a car. This is a car that you are effectively renting or leasing from us. So we own it. You do not. We handle title, registration, maintenance, repair. All of that comes with your monthly payment. Once you take delivery of the car, if the car needs tires, brakes, windshield wipers, you simply notify us in the app. We connect you with our partner, AutoNation. You go to the AutoNation store. You do not have to come out of pocket for any of those costs. Everything is covered with your monthly subscription. And then if you want to get insurance, you can either get our insurance or you can put your own insurance on the car, similar to how a lessee does it with a current lease. But we sell month-to-month auto insurance that's provided by Liberty Mutual, and we are acting as an MGA, which means that we just simply administrate it all in the apps. So if our customers get a ticket or a toll or a citation, all of that flows through the app as well.
That's wild. Okay, so is there anybody out there doing it? I mean, there's leasing companies, of course, that lease cars, right? I mean, nothing like this anywhere that I've ever heard of. I mean, is there anybody competing with you? Who's somebody that you look upon as, hey, that's a competitor we want to, we need to surpass? Or are you guys the best in the market right now, and are other people trying to catch you?
We're the only company that's focused exclusively on electric vehicles. Mm-hmm. The use case for flexible access to a car is pretty strong. Whether you're in the military, in college, working in another city on a job for a short period of time, or you just need a car for a short window of time without wanting to commit to a 3-year lease or a 6-year loan. So flexible access to a car is becoming more and more a part of modern life. But right now, the only solution is really a rental car. Rental cars, and specifically take the Tesla Model 3, for example. If you wanted to rent a Tesla Model 3 from Hertz today, it's between $103 and $110 a day. If you wanted to go to Turo, which is a little different than Hertz, but it's about $127 to $150 a day. So if you needed a car for a month from either one of those companies, you'd be spending between $3,000 and $4,000 for that car. Yeah. Our price, $450 a month. So it's a much cheaper alternative. We give you month-to-month access to the car. Our average subscriber stays with us for between 1 year and 2 years. And you just got to give us 2 weeks notice. You can return the car. You're not breaking a lease. It's not going to hurt you financially at all. Most importantly, because we're not lending you money, this is a lot easier. We just show you what the monthly payment is. We don't have to show you the selling price of the car, the interest rate, the money factor, the residual. There's no negotiation, no complication. You literally sign for the car with your phone. So once you've gone ahead and entered your credit card and your driver's license, we're doing a number of fraud checks on the back end. We're making sure you have a valid driver's license, because the biggest thing for us is we don't want to give cars to people who are going to either use it for ride share, or if somebody's had a bad driving record or a DUI or a felony arrest. All of those are knockouts for getting a car from us, because you're going to get our car. We want to make sure the car is going to be treated well. And then you drive the car, you get 1,000 miles a month with the car. If you want to buy more miles, you can buy more miles. but you keep the car for as long as you want. Then when you're done with it, you just simply turn it back in. I think we're also, finding just anecdotally, a lot of people are a little bit fearful about whether they're going to stay employed. They're worried they might lose their job, or we might be going into a tough time. So entering into a long-term commitment on a car might be problematic for them. But because this doesn't show up on your credit report as debt, it doesn't take away any of your borrowing ability. It doesn't negatively affect your credit rating in any way, shape, or form. So you can also pay for it on your credit card. So it just happens very quickly. You get issued a QR code, a reservation gets made for your local AutoNation store. You go down to the dealership. It's just a totally different path. Instead of going into the dealership and talking to a salesperson, you've got a reservation time. You walk in, show your QR code. They bring the car around. The most important thing is that the representative shows you how to link your Bluetooth to the car. That's it. Then you're in subscription. You're driving for it. It's like taking the car from a valet. You just verify there's no damage. You drive off. And then again, when you need anything, if the car needs windshield wipers, brakes, tires, you just notify us. All that's taken care of. If you need roadside assistance or you've had an accident, you notify us in the app. We connect you with a roadside assistance program. A tow truck will come if you've had an accident. It also walks you through the accident claim process. So all of that happens automatically. You don't have to figure anything else.
That's amazing. Now, you guys, your average customer so far, I mean, would it be just a middle income person, or do you have the high end people as well?
Yeah, you know what? We certainly see some high end customers. That there's no doubt, but this is primarily a near prime product. So we are seeing customers who have sort of a mid 600 FICO, not perfect credit scores. It tends to be something where this is somebody who is on their way into a new job or into a new city. And so they're just sort of on their way into their credit journey. This might also be somebody who's starting a family. So they want to have the flexibility to go from one car to another. So the idea of getting into a Tesla Model 3, and then when the Cadillac Lyriq comes out, maybe getting into that. Or if a Mercedes comes out, they can get into that. So one of the cool things about a subscription is you don't pay tax up front. You pay tax monthly when you use the thing. So instead of having to pay 9% upfront at the time of purchase, or even financing that 9%, you just pay monthly.
Yeah.
And that way, if you want to have 2 or 3 cars in the course of a year, instead of paying tax on 2 or 3 cars, you can go ahead and just drive those cars and just pay tax on a usage basis.
That's awesome. All right, now, and then when you look at, I know Mercedes. I was in a Mercedes dealer the other day. I bought a car, Mercedes, recently, and couldn't believe all the electric Mercedes they're coming out with. I mean, there's a whole lineup of Mercedes that are going to be electric. Is there anybody fighting that? Anybody not going with electric?
I think from 2010 to 2020, if you would have just listened to the conventional wisdom, you would have thought that Tesla owners were going to just run out of juice and clog the on-ramps and on-ramps of every freeway. And it just didn't happen that way. These are smart cars. They know when they need to charge. They know where to go. There's 3 kinds of charging: level 1, level 2, and level 3. 80% of EV users are driving their car less than 30 miles a day. And you can get 30 miles of charge in the evening on a level 1 charger. This is the converter cable that comes with the car. You can plug it into a 110 outlet. That also isn't taking much, load off of the overall grid as well. I advise the governor's office here in California, and on the day that they announced that they were going to propose this legislation to force everybody to buy an electric car by 2035, they also said, if you could not plug in your EV right now because we're going to have a brownout due to the heat, right? So that's a bit of a contradictory message. Everybody get an electric car, and then we're going to overload the system. And the reality is that most people are charging on a level 1 charger, and you cannot overload the system if everybody's plugged into a 110 outlet. It's the same load that you would have with your hairdryer. So,
yeah, but I've got a couple S classes, Tesla S's or whatever, a newer model and then a little bit older model, and I've got I don't know what, probably a level 2 or 3 because it's on 220. And it charges I got 300 miles on my charge, and it takes maybe 5 hours or something like that, 6 hours to charge 300 on mine at my house and in my office here. So those would be level 2 or 3.
Yeah, you're talking about level 2 charging. That's an AC fast charge. It's going to go ahead and give you 75 miles over the course of the same evening that you would. But if you charge it over the weekend, you get your whole 300 miles. I've had electric cars since they first came out, and I just use level 1 charging. It works perfectly fine for my use case. The only people that really need to use level 3 charging, which is DC fast charging, where you can get a whole 300 miles in under 1 hour, that DC fast charging capability is really for somebody who's driving interstate and they're going from one place to another where they're going to be driving more than 200 miles. You're going to have to pull over,
Sure.
charge up, and that is going to be a change in behavior because you're not going to be able to do that, 10-minute gas stop.
I've done that. I've traveled across the country with my Tesla. So yeah, I know. It's going to take you. You're going to have to manage another whatever 30%, 20% more time to get there probably, right? Because it's going to be an hour. 45 minutes to an hour each time you're going to charge compared to a 10-minute fill up or whatever. But anyway, that's something you choose to do, but that's not normal driving for most people, as you know.
Yeah. I think that the primary use case for an electric car is close to home, easy transportation. These are really easy cars to drive. As you know, with your Tesla, this is not a complex thing. When my 16-year-old was going to go through his driving lesson, he got into a Tesla and he was just like, driving's pretty easy, Dad. Versus I remember learning on a manual. And for me personally, not only do I have a Tesla, but I also have a bunch of old cars. I've got, like a 66 Mustang and I've got a 71 Bronco Super Sport. And, by comparison, these are really complex machines to operate.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm the same way. I got a couple older vehicles too, and yeah, it's a lot tougher to drive. And no power steering on my '73 GMC 4x4. It's just not the same. That air conditioning doesn't work so well either in that thing. But either way, yeah, the new cars are amazing, right? How they're so convenient, so easy to get in and understand. What do you say about? I've got a dizzy thing that happens for my Teslas. Okay, so I'm not hearing about this from my friends that have, but for some reason I get my brain gets jarred a little. I'm stupid enough to drive kind of fast, and I accelerate maybe too fast too often. But yeah. Have you heard of any of your friends that actually get a little dizziness from when they drive their Tesla a lot? Well, or a car that's that fast?
I was one of the first customers who bought a Tesla Roadster when they first came out, and that thing was
sure.
And it was so fast that the brakes couldn't even slow it down quick enough. I mean, the car itself is just one of the fastest ways to get from 0 to 60 or 0 to 100. The new Tesla Plaid S is so fast. It doesn't just give you dizziness. It actually makes your neck a little bit sore. Before you let the car go, you have to put your head back against the seat so you don't get any of that whiplash effect.
It took me a while to figure that out. So my new one is 2020 S, and it's the big motors, 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds. Yeah. The new ones, I guess, are less than 2 now, right? The Plaids are like 1.9 or something, right? But even 2.3 seconds is crazy fast. I've got friends of mine that have their Lamborghinis and McLarens, and they're not that fast, right?
Not at all.
And so anyway. So you got to get used to that and be smart about it, because in my opinion, it can be a little dangerous on the brain probably if you don't put your head back like you're saying and do all the right stuff. But it's amazing, the technology.
It's pretty remarkable that the car can be so practical, so modern, so safe, and perform so much better. I mean, it's radical.
Well, how about the fact again? I got a new Corvette as well, right? And they're fun cars to drive, and I got everything on it, but it's not the Z06 yet. But it's one that's I think 2.7 0 to 60. But you got to be perfect to get there. You got to be traction's not perfect. It's got to be perfect to get 2.7. Not in the Tesla. And by the way, when you want to haul a bunch of stuff, more room inside that Tesla S-Class I've ever seen in a sedan anywhere, right? So the amount of room in that car is incredible. The safety of the car is incredible. The ease of driving it. I mean, it's an incredible car for sure. It's not a cheap car, but it gives you so many things that you can't get otherwise.
I was just going to say the price to performance ratio of your Corvette can't be beat.
No, that's true. There's nothing like that. I mean, and the looks of it too. They're a beautiful car. And then they're going to be doing electric coming up, right? On the Corvette too now.
Yeah, Corvette's going electric as well.
You think they'll have both gas and electric, or will they just do electric?
I think that General Motors' plan is to be fully electric by 2030. I think that they will probably pick a couple of really signature cars like the Corvette to always do as a internal combustion engine option. BMW has said they're also going to make all of their lineup available in both electric, hybrid, and gas. So, ultimately, I don't think that that's going to necessarily be a cost-effective option. But right now, everybody who's invested in manufacturing an internal combustion engine has amortized that investment over 30 years. So it doesn't make any sense for them to throw it away. If you look at what Ford and General Motors and Volkswagen are doing, they're building additional facilities. They're not scrapping their old ones and retooling them. So I think you're going to see a bit of choice in the marketplace. It's going to be a pretty fun time to be a consumer. I mean, 38 different trims of electric car have been announced for the next 12 to 18 months.
Wow. Now, the automotive industry is incredible. To be part of it's got to be a blast. Now you were involved in a little bit in Tesla initially as well. Is that right?
I was. So Elon walked up and bought my house almost 20 years ago. And at the time, he was building SpaceX. He had not yet made the initial investment into Tesla. And so we ended up becoming friends just based on the fact he bought my house. And we got to know each other through that experience. And then he actually asked me to come in and help him evaluate Tesla when Martin Eberhard, the original founder, was still running it. He wanted to really understand the distribution strategy. I had a company called carsdirect.com. And Cars Direct was about direct distribution. Cars Direct implies obviously not selling through a dealer, but I was pretty well acclimated to that whole issue. And so he wanted to have my point of view about this. And I gave him the business plan that we had written about direct distribution. And today, Tesla, it continues to be a direct-to-consumer retailer, one of the only. One of the benefits, obviously, of building cars to order is that you don't have to have an inefficient build-to-inventory system. One of the disadvantages is, obviously, when you have a factory, it only has an on and an off switch. You don't want to make fewer than the number of cars because you got to pay for labor and all the other fixed costs. Sure. And so I think one of the things that's really remarkable to see is that Tesla today is operating at the scale they are. They produced 367,000 cars in the third quarter, electric cars. Wow, everybody else produced 30,000 combined. So Tesla is by far the dominant electric car manufacturer. They will be for some time, but we're students of who's putting shovels in the dirt. Right now, you've got Ford and GM investing billions of dollars to catch up. It's going to take a minute, but the pleasant headache of filling demand is very different than wondering if you have a market. So right now, one of the cool things about the electric car business and being in this business is wait lists have emerged everywhere. And even though we're a new company, we've got thousands of customers deep waiting for cars. So I don't have to wonder whether or not if I buy more cars, those cars are going to get right out on the road. That is a tremendous advantage as an early stage business.
Okay, now thinking about the Tesla's charging stations. I got some friends that are involved in installing those here in Illinois and across the country and stuff. And I'm a paving guy, right? I pave parking lots. We pave more parking lots maybe than almost anybody, maybe anybody in the country. There might be one company that paves more parking lots than us. We do concrete and asphalt parking lots. And we claim to be the most productive, highest quality company in our space. We use technology like nobody else to do what we do. We use 3D technology. We use our electronics are the best on our equipment. We use artificial intelligence and drones to do assessment and engineering of our customers' properties across the globe. And we have a lot of fun, right? But I've got the next step right now is my team is really interested in building parking lots, solar canopies in parking lots. Solar canopies where you provide shelter in lousy weather like we have in Illinois in the winter. You provide shade in hot, humid summer days, and then you have this is a source of electric that you can create, right? We can build parking lots that'll last longer than anybody else in the country. So we're confident we can build parking lots that'll last 100 years. Okay, so when you build a canopy over a pavement that has like zero maintenance, right? And there's not many companies that can claim this and do it. We can basically own and share the ownership of that parking lot, that pavement and the canopy with the customer, and provide amazing annuity in our opinions, right? Including the charging stations that would be part of it, right? So we're going back and forth on all this, trying to figure it all out. But it seems like a kind of a no-brainer to do it with the demand that we're going to see in the future of electric, right? So if we can do these, we have access. Our customers are the biggest building owners in the world. Walmarts, Home Depots, Prologis, Blackstone, right? Some of the biggest owners in the world of real estate and buildings are our best customers. So we have access to over 5 billion square feet of parking lots. And with that, the ability to assess and figure out where the solar can work best. And so we can consult and help them and basically even install and pay for these, in my opinion, with the right investment from probably some partners. Because Gary Rabine cash will run out pretty quick if it's all my cash that does this. But it just seems like kind of a no-brainer, because we can build a pavement that'll last more than 40 years. All right, because that maybe 30, 40 years would be the life expectancy of a canopy. We'd have a heck of a product. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll tell you, if I was not doing electric vehicle subscriptions, I would definitely be in the charging infrastructure business. It is one of the biggest booms that we've seen in a long time. The electrification of automotive is going to be bigger than the introduction of the car in the first place. You've got a massive ecosystem that's going to have to think differently about how it does everything. And charging these vehicles is going to be key. One of the cool advantages, though, is you don't have to trench all the way back to the power plant. If you think about how inefficient delivering gasoline is to gas stations, it's happening on trucks, right? You've got to basically haul all of that fuel and at maximum weight to all of these stations on a daily basis. It is just an inherently very, very high friction, high physics-based activity, whereas electricity is already at the destination. You have to put in substations. Almost all of these level 3 charging facilities also are affiliated with a battery array. So the battery array becomes a storage facility as well. It can feed power back into the grid. And the cool thing about having a battery array attached to a charge point is that you can also take electricity, put it into cars during peak hours without using the grid at all. These are great businesses. And most importantly, if timing is anything in business, and I think it's everything, the number of dollars that are on the table, both at a federal, state, and city level for supporting infrastructure and this investment is enormous. Right now, there's a $5 billion federal incentive for building superchargers along interstate highways. That is being coupled with many, many billions of dollars at the state and city level. It is a tremendous opportunity. If done properly, entrepreneurs can build these facilities at no cost and create a long-term recurring revenue stream. We're all going to be driving an electric car. That's the prediction for sure. And it's not going to be that, most of us will be, all of us will be driving an electric car. Our internal combustion engine vehicles will become trophies, and they'll become things that we cherish, and they're not going away. So you don't have to dig up the gas stations and throw them away, but it's going to be a very different future. And I think charging infrastructure is such a clear, fast follow opportunity that right now it's booming. It's bigger than almost any other part of the overall ecosystem.
Yeah. And again, we have a bird's eye view on our customers' pavements and what needs to be repaved. So any parking lots that you're going to rebuild anyway, perfect opportunity to rebuild and put a canopy in, because the cost then is very minimal. The difference in cost is minimal compared to redoing something that's in pretty good shape. So yeah, that's interesting. So I'd love to talk to you more about that, what we're thinking there, but it could be a lot of fun. So what are your thoughts then on when you look at the oil industry, right? And you think about the difference in the environmental difference, right? Some people say that this solar stuff, these electric cars are fueled by coal, right? Because electric, coal is still a big chunk of our electric. Solar is very little. Wind is very little. Where is that at now? Where do you think it's going? And do you feel there's a big difference environmentally currently? Because my thoughts are not a big difference now, but could be in the long term if solar really continues to gain ground.
I think anybody who uses the argument that coal and oil is what powers the electrification argument is just trying to put downforce on the transformation. And they're probably an incumbent of some kind. The reality is that a smart grid, which is exactly what electric cars are, they are effectively making every time they charge up smart. They know where to go, what they need. They can also choose to charge up in the most efficient manner in terms of the cost of electricity and so forth. All of those things, I think, are transformative in terms of giving us the opportunity to actually go out and then look for more sustainable sources of power at scale. So I think that power generation is obviously a hot topic. It's very political. Personally, I think that if you're looking for sort of the max output to effort and cost ratio, nuclear is such a tremendous source of power. Obviously, it comes with a bunch of natural embedded fear, but sustainable power generation is becoming a very big and profitable business. And depending on where you are, if the wind blows or the sun is shining, or the water is flowing, all of these things are going to become much more applicable over time. But it starts with, where is it going? How's the energy being consumed? If all of our energy has to be consumed during certain peak times, then the power generation has to be able to flux up and down. And there's often contradiction. So you do have to use coal and oil and things to power generation during peak hours. So that's inherently inefficient. So having batteries at the other end, which allow us to load balance how and when the demand is, because power has always been historically about peak. You have to be able to generate enough to meet peak demand, and therefore it's inherently inefficient during non-peak times. That is all changing. So I think that's going to open up all sorts of ways to unlock sustainable choices on mass scale power production.
In your opinion, though, and do you feel like solar, though, it's gaining? I haven't tracked how much solar is gaining when it comes to generation. Is it gaining 5% a year, 50% a year, or whatever of the market? I don't know. But is it 20 years off that it gets to 30%, 30% capacity?
I don't think it needs to be 20 years off at all. I live in California, and we're subsidized to the point here where putting solar panels on your roof doesn't cost you any money. And you can be in a totally circular situation where you're powering the batteries at your home and charging your electric vehicle from the solar power that you generate in your own home. That is the whole sort of rubric around Tesla and Solar City and what they did there. I do believe that at a mass scale, though, the argument that we are using inherently inefficient coal-powered power plants to electrify our cars is a very short-sighted argument, and it's certainly just designed to put a little bit of fear into the equation. I think it's the same kind of fear between, any kind of sustainable energy versus nuclear. I think there's just a lot of myth and a lot of just natural fear that's embedded in that. But you cannot ignore the data that if you want to really be efficient, we should be using nuclear. And I understand why people are fearful of that, and some of the things that have happened over the course of the last 40, 50 years around the world with nuclear. But I think right now solar is absolutely the best path forward, and it looks like it's certainly gaining steam. But you could provide all of the power needs for the entire U.S. with about a quarter of the state of Utah. I mean, you need a large solar farm, but it is not as though we're talking about something that is unattainable.
I mean, so when we look at the future of like heavy duty equipment, trucks, and we run a lot of pavers and rollers and dozers and all those things. How long before that it becomes efficient to power those, in your opinion? Have you heard anything on in electric? I know there's trucks out there and all that, but
almost all commercial uses for electric cars are benefited by lower torque or higher torque. The electric motor is a pretty remarkable thing, and I think that you're going to see more of that faster than you think. I've already visited a number of companies that are in a lot of these different applications where electrification is becoming the norm. It does take a bit of investment to switch over, but these vehicles are going to be more effective, more efficient, and cost less over time. So I expect it's going to hit everything. Those tractors that pull airplanes around at the airport, they've all gone electric in the last 3 years.
I've heard that.
It's pretty amazing.
That's amazing. It is awesome. All right, tell me, what do you think off subject? What do you think of Elon and Twitter? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that he's a very high-minded guy, and he's, got the thick enough skin to jump into that kind of an environment. And I mean, it's sort of like getting into politics without even being a politician. So there's a bunch of things that I would not enjoy about what he's doing, but I understand his objective. He believes that free speech is absolutely essential to civilization. He wants to make that a place where people can be free to speak. And I think that that's noble. He's willing to put his money where his mouth is. I think just purely, it's undeniable the effect it's having on Tesla. It's undeniable the effect it's having on his halo as a brand. Those are hard things to watch, but I admire him for what he's doing. I agree with many of the things. I think that anytime you're going to mix it up with, Kanye West and the Kardashians, it's going to be a little bit messy. And so I don't envy what he's doing at all. But I worry, he's running 3 really big, really important companies, and there isn't physically enough time in a day to do the things he's doing. So he either is going to do some of them poorly, and this goes all the way back to my West Point story. If you're going to succeed at Plebe Summer, you got to do 2 things. You got to pick which 2 to do right. So that's part of the exercise. Did you choose the 2 to do right, and did you ignore the other 8, and did you excel at those 2 things? That's sort of the test in front of him right now. And he is, to some degree, doing too many things, and he's going to do them more poorly if he keeps spreading himself thin.
Yeah. I admire 100% what he's doing at Twitter. I mean, I think we need that. We need it in our country. He's got the wherewithal financially, hopefully, to stomach some of the hits he's going to take, and maybe, hopefully in the long run, I hope that he ends up, stronger financially than ever be because of the guts he had to step forward and do what he thinks is right in that case.
The fact that he's been in there for 1 month, first of all, just the fact that Twitter operates flawlessly with 75% fewer people managing it is astonishing. That is just mind blowing. Nobody would have ever thought that's possible, and he saw that. But secondly, to come in and root out child sex trafficking and do some of the things that he's doing, he's just pulling back the layer and just saying, why are we not tackling these problems? They are very common sense issues, and he's removing all of the bureaucracy and all of the inefficiency out of the equation. It's not pretty, and it is. Change is sometimes very uncomfortable for people, especially that people who are just comfortable in their positions. And so he's a change agent for sure, and he is fairly formidable in terms of being able to make those changes and stand up to people. It's impressive to watch. But I hope he gets some good time off, and he gets to have a little peace of mind that he can enjoy some time with his family too.
Yeah, we're blessed to have him for sure. We're blessed to have him in our society. One of the most innovative leaders in the history of the world. Okay, so let's finish with what a couple of things that I want to make sure he had. What drove you? I mean, who was somebody in your life, or a couple of people in your life that made you who you are? The guy that served at the highest level, and got to the amazing West Point and Academy and served our country, doing amazing things in business and constantly going forward with an innovative mind. Who do you look to? What makes this mind of yours what it is?
Well, I think one of the great things about doing what I do is I get to pick my mentors and pick my friends. And so, my heroes are guys like Michael Dell, Richard Branson, Elon. I know them all well. I spend time with them. I refer to them when I need help and perspective on things. My 2 big heroes when I was growing up were my grandfathers. One was an executive at Pan Am and a lifer, and he ultimately was the chairman and CEO of Aloha Airlines, and he ran a number of different airlines. So very much an aviation guy, but corporate manager. My other grandfather was an entrepreneur and a real estate developer, and he ultimately became the ambassador to New Zealand under Bush 41. So I had these 2 really big figures in my life, and they were totally different. One was very much about planning and process, and the other one was very much about charisma and vision and thinking big. They were both big influences on me. But personally, I really just admire entrepreneurs that have gone out and created their own brand. I remember when I started learning about Richard Branson, I thought he was the greatest entrepreneur of all time, just understanding how his brand could be applied to so many different companies. And now when Virgin launches something new, everybody knows what that brand sentiment is all about. What I've tried to do with companies like TrueCar and Fair and Cars Direct is really all sort of aligned with creating a brand personally that is about customer first, right? And I think almost anybody in the car business that hears of me, I'm not necessarily loved by people inside the car business, but I'm no joke. And they definitely know that I'm serious and I'm focused on the customer experience and making that something that is great. And so I do have the privilege of being able to rely on these personal mentors. I'm not a member of like YPO or some of these other things. I don't have enough time to spend with my family and friends as it is. But I do really sort of have my own personal board of directors. Just another guy that not super well known, but Bob Pittman, who's the chairman and CEO of iHeartRadio. Just guys like that I've gotten to know over the years. Howard Lutnick, who runs Cantor Fitzgerald. People that have just absolutely killed it in their lives, who are absolutely meaningful entrepreneurs who've done incredible things that I can now rely on as a good friend and also a mentor when I'm facing challenges. That's really helpful to me.
That's I love it, and that's what I rely on my mentors in many ways, and continue to be a mentor to as many people as I can be. And that's that balance to have that the time with those 4 great kids. I have 2 sons, 2 daughters, like you. Was married for 35 years. My wife passed away about a little over 2 years ago. But overall, right, it's about that work-life balance, to be able to spend that time with your amazing partner and your kids that you want to be great human beings, right? And that's
for me. These kids are like companies, right? I invest the same amount of passion and energy into them. And kids are all so different, right? I've got 2 kids that are clearly going to be entrepreneurs, and I've got 2 kids that are going to go to college and graduate and do professional things, and they're going to be absolutely playing it safe in their life, and they'll be exceptional at what they do. But my 2 entrepreneurs, they're going to have an up and down life. They're going to go through a lot of rough patches, and they're going to have a lot of big wins and a lot of big losses. But that's been more my life, and so I can help them in many ways more so than my other 2.
And what will you do to when you think I've got almost the same thing. My son is the CEO of all our companies today. He's 35 years old. My next daughter is the CEO of our national business. She's 33 years old, and then the other 2 are lawyer, attorney. Her and her husband have some small businesses, but they're kind of on their own. And I have a son that's 21 that'll probably he's a project manager now. May never want, doesn't seem like he wants to actually lead a business, to be an entrepreneur. But how do you can't treat them all the same. That's not what it's about, right? Treat them all, fair, but life's not fair, right? So how do you raise them to understand life's not fair? I'm here for you no matter what track you choose, right? I just want the best. You be the best human you can be. So again, how do you think that way? Because you got the same thing. You got different character traits and different paths for our kids. But how do you look at that?
Well, my boys are older. So I've got 2 boys, 21 and 16, and then I've got 2 girls, 10 and 12. I teach my boys character by looking out for their sisters, and I teach my girls a good example of male love is looking out for their brothers to take care of them. And we travel all over the world together and always have, and we look like a gaggle going through the airport. But, my sons know that if my daughters are happy, they get the credit. If they're sad, it's their fault. And they're accountable for that. But it's hard to raise kids in this culture where everything's moving so fast too, and we also grow up in a tech family. And so, my entrepreneurial kids don't understand the boundaries of tech. They want to go out and explore the world. And they, that cell phone or the iPad is really their ticket to freedom, like the car was for me back in the day. So I think that's a modern challenge, but I do love being a dad. I mean, that's my number one thing by far. And I sort of treat my companies like they're my kids to some degree. But I make myself really available to entrepreneurs, and always in my companies, I've got a certain crop of folks who want to grow up and become leaders, not just in the companies I'm building, but in companies that they want to go out and build. And so I'm always giving advice about, fundraising, company building, and leadership. And it's no different than the kind of stuff I say to my kids. I really think authentically, it's such a great lesson to be able to talk to my kids about what we do in the context of their lives. Like my 21 and 16-year-old driving a car from Autonomy, they now understand the issue of depreciating assets, debt, how all that plays in, buying an appreciating asset. They sit there and every time they come see me, they walk right by my cars, and they, those are not the same as the cars they're driving. And so there's just a lot of authenticity in sort of how we're raising these kids. But we live in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is just the worst in terms of sort of exposing kids to too much too soon. I worry about that. I'd love to pull them out of here and go to a ski town somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. We have to worry about that. We have to worry about throwing too much at our kids at one point, and let them work hard for what they get, so they respect it. And I think it's really important in life. I've done that. I think you're doing that makes good sense. All right, you're an amazing guy. We're really blessed to have you today on Ditch Digger CEO. Chris, what'd you pick up? We like to at the end to just jot down a few things, a few differentiators or nuggets for success that we pick up. Chris, my partner here, what do you pick up on this amazing guy, Scott Painter?
Oh man, so much. Scott, really thank you so much for spending the time with us today. You're an inspiration, man. This is incredible. Couple things. If your vehicle breaks down in front of a military enlistment center, definitely join the Army, because it'll set you on the path to incredible success and adventure. If you're tasked with doing 10 huge things, do 2 great and discard the other 8. That will lead you down a great path. There's a very important difference between truth and manners, and knowing this, I think, is a huge key to success. If you're running for class president, deliver a chaperone-free trip to New York City and a toga party to secure your election.
I'll tell you what, that's got to be, Gary, I do not envy you getting into politics. As I've been a pretty high profile entrepreneur over the years, I'm 54 and I've been asked whether or not I would get into politics at all. And I was raised very conservative, and I just think it's a horribly tough time to be a politician. I think, one of the things that in my past, I also was one of the guys involved with 1-800-DENTIST. And if you think about the things that we all do in modern life that are fearful, and we do this survey all the time, and what we hear is buying a car and going to the dentist are 2 of the worst things. Yeah. And then the only other thing is the 2 lowest trust sort of industries are lawyers and politicians. And I got to think that being a politician, if I ever did it, I think the press conference would start with, let's just go ahead and do the laundry now. Just say, here's everything that anybody might ever say about me. And look, and if you don't like it, let's get it out of the way now, and let's argue our way through that. I think I've lived a life that also involves a lot of struggle. Being an entrepreneur is a lot harder than people think. If you're a truly authentic entrepreneur, there's a hard way to determine whether something is a failure or a success. I mean, certainly when you have binary financial success, everybody says that's a success.
Easy.
But almost every real financial positive outcome I've ever had, it would have been hard to tell it was successful until the very end. It looked like a struggle and a failure. So people, I'm sure look at you as they look at me, Scott. And often friends of mine just don't see my day to day. We'll say, man, Rabine, you got a horseshoe up your butt, man. You've been so lucky. And I'll say, you know what, thanks, I appreciate that. It came with a little bit of work too, right? But I know, the tough times I've had, my wife did, my kids did, my family, my close friends do. They understood that, when we had tough times, and we've had, a few of them in our 40 years. Same thing with you. You've had tough times, right? But you don't wear those on your sleeve. If you do, you fall deeper, right? So you got to stay positive through the tough times and get through them, get back up and keep going forward. And it looks like a positive path, right? Even though you got knocked down a few times and people don't even know it. So you're right about that. I'll tell you one final story. In talking with my 4 kids, my oldest daughter is really, really intense. She is just high energy, a lot of ADHD, and she's going to be an entrepreneur in her life for sure. And my youngest son, who's very introspective, very disciplined, very OCD, came to me one day, and this was about 5 years ago, and said, Dad, Zoe really bugs me, and I don't know if I want her to be my sister anymore. And I said, well, she's gonna be your sister no matter what you think. But Noah, what do you like about Zoe? And he's like, nothing. And I said, well, let's list all of her qualities. And we list her qualities. And one of the qualities he put down there is her persistence, resilience, right? Determination to do a thing. And so we just had a family dinner, and I said, hey, what do you guys all think is the most important single quality to success in life? And we all agreed that it was persistence, determination, and resilience. And Noah said at the end of that dinner, he goes, Dad, if this is true, then Zoe's going to be the president of the United States. So
yeah, no, that's a huge that's a huge thing. Persistence. If you have persistence, and I've got two kids that have lots of persistence, and two that don't have as much. For sure, the two that had it got their way more often than I wanted them to, right? And it's just kind of how it is, right? So in business and life, it's a good thing, really, if you do it with class and all that, right? So Chris, what else do you pick up? So I look at that, what he did is he differentiated to show leadership, and they wanted him to lead because of his differentiation. But what else did you see, Chris?
Well, I will share this with you, Scott. While we were on the interview, I texted my girlfriend Autonomy.com and like a screenshot of the $450 per month, and I was like, babe, I think we can get a Tesla.
That's great. I love it.
Like, I'll put my car on the market right now. So you may have gotten at least one new customer out of this. Mm-hmm.
And we'll make sure that car comes right to your driveway.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, we're very excited. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Just a couple quick things, and we'll let you go.
Chris, you said you're down in Florida?
So I'm actually in Pasadena.
Oh, okay. So we have cars right away.
Yeah. I loved your how you met Elon. So I put here, if you're looking to meet Elon, get him to buy your house. And I loved your insight on how if you weren't in the car business, you'd be in the charging infrastructure business, because that's just in a huge boom right now. So any entrepreneurs listening to this, I'm sure would love to hear that. Scott, where can people find out more about you and more about all your entrepreneurs and adventures?
Well, so autonomy.com has information about what we're building and all sorts of press coverage on us. I mean, it's sort of douchey to say. I mean, you can just Google me. I'm pretty easily discoverable online. I've been out talking about the same stuff for a long time. So there's lots of interviews and lots of quotes, and we tend to get a lot of attention for what we're doing. So there's a lot of stuff out there on me.
Cool. Awesome.
Scott, I really appreciate your time today, buddy. You're awesome. And I go out to California every once in a while. I've got some friends out there. I am in YPO, so I've got a bunch of YPO friends out there, and many like you. Great, not maybe a couple to your level, but not many. You're not common, dude. You should have been a YPO. You would have dominated YPO, and maybe that's why you didn't want to. You didn't want to, beat up all these low achievers, because there's plenty of those compared to what you've done. So thank you so much.
It's fascinating. Yeah. It's fascinating. Early in my career, I flirted with getting into YPO, and every time that I went through the interview process, I was in between companies, and my company wouldn't qualify. And I was like, this is ridiculous. This is what I'm I'm not just a serial entrepreneur. I'm a pathological entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's right. I like that. Pathological.
And so in the few moments over my career where I would have jumped into YPO, I didn't qualify. And I thought, you know what?
You didn't need it, dude. I mean, it's awesome what you've done and what you're doing. Thanks for being who you are. I really appreciate you. And again, I'm going to look you up when I come out to California. If you come to Chicago ever, if you ever come to Chicago, you need anything here in Chicago or the Midwest or Naples, Florida, I know a lot of people. So anything I can do for you in the future. Okay.
It was very good to meet you, and thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. God bless you, and thanks for being on. Appreciate it.
Okay.